Accountability for the Epstein class is possible, and we know that's true because of what is happening in Europe. Leaders of big institutions, universities, government officials, past and present, are being forced to resign, step down, kicked out of their positions, and prosecuted for the crimes that they committed. European leaders are showing us that we can bring justice for the survivors of Epstein's crimes, but they are not just pushing for that justice to happen within their own borders. They are pushing for it to happen in the place where it isn't. Our government. And the UN is leading that charge with a bombshell being dropped on Donald Trump over millions of documents and the crimes that they allege that he is committing right now. We are going to get into it all, but it starts with what our government, of course, isn't doing. That is what Ro Khanna just broke down in an interview last night with Caitlin Collins. That's where I want to start because he lays out the path for what needs to come next.
In your view, is what the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, what she said, is that true?
No. I mean, look, Secretary Clinton is just speaking the facts. She's not making any allegations. She didn't even mention the word Donald Trump. She's a brilliant lawyer. She read the Epstein Transparency Act that Thomas Massie and I passed, and she's simply stating that they're filled with redactions, what they're releasing. They're protecting people who have actually committed crimes or who allegedly abused some of these survivors. They failed to protect some of the survivors, and they should come clean, just have a full release of these files. And even the Republicans don't believe Pam Bondi. Ask Congresswoman Nancy Mace or Congressman Massey. There's talk of doing a subsequent bill to strengthen the Epstein Transparency Act.
Do you think that could actually happen?
I hope it doesn't take that because the law is already clear. But remember, Caitlin, we passed the Epstein Transparency Act 427-1 in the House and 100-0 in the Senate. We had veto-proof majorities. That's why President Trump signed it. And I have not met a single person who worked on this who believes that they have been transparent in the disclosures. The problem is they've already released so much that is leading to international scandals, that is leading to France to say we're going to have a prosecuting committee. The British monarchy is having to answer questions. The British government is in trouble. Here you've had resignations at Goldman Sachs' lawyers, powerful law firms. And so the American public want more information.
Can I ask about one person? Because I know the House Oversight Committee, members of it, are going to Ohio tomorrow to speak to the former CEO of Victoria's Secret. That's Les Wexner. His name had been in the files, was redacted in one piece, then unredacted last week after Thomas Massie had called it out. He had a long financial and personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He's denied wrongdoing. What information are you hoping to gain from him in this deposition?
What was his financial relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Point blank, did he ever abuse young girls? And did he know of other people who were abusing young girls? How many times did he visit the island? How did Epstein make his money? So he has a lot to answer for. But it's not just him. My view is every single person who has emails showing that they visited the island, especially after Epstein was a convicted pedophile, should be coming before the Congress and answering questions and be investigated. And the Justice Department should start a special prosecution investigatory committee.
Donald Trump faces a major problem with the cover-up of his Epstein files, which I think we can see being attempted to be resolved by Kash Patel right now. And you might say, okay, what is Kash Patel doing at the FBI? He's usually partying. I think it's because Kash Patel is on Dan Bongino's podcast today. Now, we're going to talk about that probably later in the day, but right now the focus of this administration is clearly their media operation more than anything. I think that they believe they achieved some sort of cover-up with their half release of documents, their criminal failed release of documents, and now they're trying to play the media game, sending out all of their stooges to make light of Epstein, make jokes, call his victims alleged victims, to say that the parties were just parties and not grooming in criminal enterprises. That is their goal right now, is to shape the media narrative. But at the same time as that happens, Donald Trump hurts their media narrative, that it wasn't really that big of a deal, by talking about Bill and Hillary Clinton as two people behind a grand conspiracy along with Epstein and Michael Wolff and hell, Obama's birth certificate to keep him from getting elected. Donald Trump is playing both sides. He is saying that this is a huge deal, but also something that we should just move on from. But the truth is, yeah, this is a huge deal. And that is what the UN is making clear with their call out of Trump and their claims about the criminality in these documents and those yet to be overturned and shown to the public yet. Allegations in Epstein files may amount to crimes against humanity, UN experts say. Millions of files related to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein suggest the existence of a global criminal enterprise that carried out acts meeting the legal threshold of crimes against humanity, according to a panel of independent experts appointed by the United Nations Human Rights Council. The experts said crimes outlined in documents released by the U.S. Justice Department were committed against a backdrop of supremacist beliefs, racism, corruption, and extreme misogyny. The crimes, they said, showed a commodification and dehumanization of women and girls. So grave is the scale, nature, systemic character, and transnational reach of those atrocities against women and girls that a number of them may reasonably meet the legal threshold of crimes against humanity, the experts said in a statement. The experts said the allegations contained in the files require an independent, thorough, and impartial investigation, and said inquiries should also be launched into how it was possible for such crimes to be committed for so long. The U.S. Justice Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A law approved by Congress with broad bipartisan support in November requires all Epstein files to be made public. The UN experts raised concerns about serious compliance failures and botched redactions that exposed sensitive victim information. More than 1,200 victims were identified in the documents that have been released so far. So not only is the UN alleging the crimes against humanity that were committed obviously in these Epstein files, some of which Donald Trump is alleged, or I should say is a part of, as shown in these documents, they're also calling for a broader global investigation and for some nonpartisan independent entity to carry out an investigation of what is happening with the, I think botched is putting it nicely, systematically designed effort to hide the Epstein files, the criminal effort to hide the Epstein files. They are calling for full releases, full redactions, of course with the victims protected, which is obviously not even close to a care of Todd Blanche, Pam Bondi, or Kash Patel, considering she wouldn't even fucking look at them because she's a bitch. I think it's okay to say that about Pam Bondi, but that is what the UN is calling for. And at the same time, that's just bringing more attention to these files, which, again, need more attention than ever. And attention with the level of seriousness that the UN is offering. Crimes against humanity is the only way to describe this operation. And for a media class that is, I feel like, deliberately tried to numb us from these Epstein files, referring to him as a disgraced financier rather than someone who committed crimes against humanity. I think, and I talked about this before, I'm not really a language stickler, but in this instance, I think that the words that we use and the emotions they evoke are important. Apps like TikTok and Instagram will suppress certain words that would go along with conversations about the Epstein files. YouTube does the same thing. You see language like unalived rather than killed or dead that people use to trick the algorithms. And I think in a time in which saying these words matters so much, we have to be very well aware of how we've been desensitized systematically by these algorithms to not engage with those words, to not feel the full force of how much that disturbs us when you have to hear them. And I think we should know that, realize that Donald Trump and Todd Blanche want it to be called partying with Epstein, and use the reality of what actually happened when describing it, to not beat around a bush, not self-censor, but to say the full truth. Because it's the only way that we will get accountability, is to make sure that people feel just how disgusting this operation is, and not allow the media or Donald Trump and Pam Bondi to desensitize us, to numb us, and to try to get us to forget. because we already have seen instances of accountability. It can happen. Of course, we're seeing it in Europe, but there are some examples in the U.S. as well that Ari Melber broke down right here.
Now, Republican Thomas Massie, who has been really seen as a good faith bipartisan collaborator here, working with Democrats to get to the bottom of this, says on any given day, I need one or two of my own co-conspirators to get something done. Once we get past Republican primaries, I think you're going to see defections. That's his reference to the fact that Trump still has, of course, more sway in primary season, but there is a lot more that they can do if they get the votes. Now, what's happening out there? What has happened in places where we've seen that the files show prosecutors and investigators might have been pressured out of doing a full investigation or fallen down on the job, and the things we've shown you on our timeline? Well, this is interesting. The state of New Mexico now has a new probe into Epstein's ranch there. Survivors have said they were abused. That ranch has been known for a long time. What we're seeing is how information, investigation, and public pressure can lead to investigations that otherwise were not going to happen. Colombia has now sanctioned 2 individuals that they think helped Epstein's girlfriend gain admission there, again, through how his largesse may have distorted things far away from his own accused sex crimes, but just the sort of way he wielded influence. 2 prominent business people facing consequences over their ties to Epstein. We reported, for example, on the Wasserman issue, his ties to Maxwell, not to any alleged crimes per se, have led to him having to sell off his entire talent agency. Others across the spectrum facing subpoenas or these pressure points we've shown you. The New York Times asked, why didn't anyone say something? And that what we're learning, again, from this unusual transparency effort shows how a group can collude with dark secrets if they serve their interest. The price of admission to Epstein's world was, the Times says, silence. And so when you look at this entire issue, it has really gone topsy-turvy. It started as something that was so under-investigated with so little accountability that became part of the scandal. And the question over years, would he really get away with it forever? And then, of course, he was ultimately, Mr. Epstein was indicted. He died in prison, awaiting trial. Maxwell later indicted and convicted. So you had some baseline accountability, though very delayed. And the idea was, well, leave it there. And Donald Trump repeatedly said, leave it there. It's old news. Nothing more to see here. But he was overruled.
Accountability is possible, but only if we continue to meet this moment with the outrage that it deserves. It is a rightful outrage, and that is what we need to continue with. Again, we cannot allow the mainstream media to numb us. I'm certainly not going to allow that to be the case. If you want to support our work, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around at the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'll see you soon.